for starters, we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the news about Dan Quinn. Just what was your reaction when y'all were able to get that done and you found out he was coming back this year?
Well, we knew we had some moving parts right away and knew they were going to be happening. We were where it was going to happen before even we played our first playoff game. So it was just outstanding to hear that he wants to be back, going to be back, wants to be back, and, fired up about where we started. Obviously, we had a long ways to go with this defense. When the season started, we really struggled the year before. And, just really felt like Dan was the right guy for it, and he came in and was everything and more, to our defensive football team than even we could have hoped for. And I think the guys, we've got a good young group over there. They like to play for him, as we saw this year. They played at a really high level. And, the great news is I think the air is up. I mean, I think we're only going to get better as people get more and more accustomed to what he wants, from them. And, the good news is hopefully we can, even improve, the personnel from that standpoint as we move forward. And now that we know kind of what Dan is looking for and the type of personnel that we want to have and the defense that we ultimately want to be.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, we're at the Senior Bowl. I know that the coaching staff isn't here, but just when you think about the draft process, what does it mean to have continuity and kind of keep building with the same guy the way you did last year?
Well, Jerry and I are big on continuity. I mean, I just don't think it's if you can avoid having to make changes, it's huge because we all know with change comes changes all the way throughout your football team if you decide to make decisions like that. Obviously, we had Jason around here for a long time, and obviously we want Mike to be around here for a long time, and then to be able to have his staff intact for the most part. We've still got some moving parts, obviously, with a couple guys out there, including Kellen, but our hope is that we can keep Kellen and keep this continuity going and build on what we ultimately know. We're so disappointed in that we've had a good football team this year. We just weren't able to win a playoff game. But you look at the games out there, you look at our game, it came down to the wire. You look at the divisional games, they all came down to the wire, and then obviously the conference championship games did. So it's about the little things, and I think the more you keep continuity, the more you have a chance to build on being better at the little things. There's some obvious things out there that we can do better, whether it's the penalty part of our game or whether it's improving upon our run game. I just think all those things we can get better at as we move forward, and can be the difference in us winning playoff games.
I'm sure. There's an element of this you can't comment on. You mentioned Kellen, but how does that work at this late in it's February now and some things are still up in the air. Are you just waiting to see what happens with that, or do you work on contingency plans? I guess just how do you approach not having that finalized?
The great news, and that's why Dan, not that Kellen's not a huge integral part of this, and we certainly want to keep him, but the great news is, Mike's, he's an offensive football coach, and called plays for Super Bowl teams and championship teams, and so it gives you a little more safety net, if you will, versus where we were on the defensive side of the ball. So certainly it's great to have Mike and what he's all about in place, and then hopefully not that I'm not rooting for Kellen. I think the world of Kellen, and that's why we want him back. At the same time, not rooting against him, to further his career, but hopefully it works out to where selfishly where we can keep him.
I guess along those lines, and Mike talked about that at his exit press conference about we want to build this thing around Dak. Not a whole lot's going to change regardless of what happens with Kellen. And I get that seems kind of like what you're hinting at, is that you feel pretty good that you can keep that intact even regardless of what happens with
this whole thing revolves around number 4. That's what this league's all about. It's a quarterback-driven league. We feel like we got one of the best in the business, if not the best. And, it's all about him. And we've got to continue to put the pieces around him. That's why I mentioned things like the running game and, cleaning up the penalties. All those things are just going to put Dak in better situations to be successful and win football games for us, which he's shown he can do at a high level. And I think if we do those things, we won't be putting him in some of the tough situations that we put him in this year. So, as Mike said, this is what it's all about. It's a quarterback-driven league and all about Dak, and we've got some good pieces around him, and we'll just continue to look to improve.
How you doing?
Apologize
No.
if I've already missed some of this, but when you look at some of the challenges the offense had in the last couple months of the season, I mean, you mentioned run game, the penalties. How much of that, or where can Dak most improve to try and eliminate it?
I think, it's like I just said. I think, we put Dak in some tough situations with penalties, having some struggles in the run game. We had games where we ran the ball well, but we've got to be more consistent. And if you're running the ball well and you knock the penalties out of a lot of these games this year, I think we give ourselves a much better opportunity to win the game, which obviously, all relates to Dak in terms of not only winning games, but put him in situations to move the football and score points.
How much do those types of things change the way the quarterback sees the defense? Because when Dak was talking about it after the Arizona game, it was like, on one hand, he's been doing this 6 years, but on the other hand, the defense are going to show you different looks if the run game's not what it was.
Well, absolutely. That's why it's so important. And we're not the only team. There's 31 other teams at this combine that want to run the ball. I mean, that's if you look at the motto, the theme of all those playoff games, all those, whether it's the 49ers who beat us, their theme was run the football. The Rams, they want to run the football. Now, once you start to run the football well, then it opens everything else up and, makes it easier. And then again, the penalties, I go back to that, is we've got to clean that up. I mean, you put yourselves, holding penalties are drive killers. And we've just got to clean those things up, and I think it'll certainly impact some of the games that we weren't successful in.
When y'all, and especially Jerry, kept saying last draft, pressure, 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 that's the vision we had for Micah, I wouldn't say we didn't believe y'all, but we were a little bit curious about it. What did you learn from how well Micah's rookie year went and how well you were able to utilize him with the vision when you look at this year's draft class?
Well, we did stress pressure, and Jerry and I both looked at each other and said, we've heard this before when we draft a behind-the-line linebacker, and are we really going to use him to get pressure? But, Dan convinced us that he had a lot of ways, a vision to use a player like Micah. And, it's just, you saw how important it is and how he can affect football games. He's obviously Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player Rookie of the Year, and an All-Pro. And, he's a special football player. But, that's the important thing about personnel and what we're getting ready to get into right now between the draft and, between free agency and what players we're going to keep in free agency. All that relates to the vision for both offense, defense, and special teams in terms of making sure we pick players that we have a vision for. You've got to make that happen, or they don't end up playing, and then you say, well, why didn't you draft better? But when these guys hit the field and they played, then obviously, y'all knew what you were doing in the draft. Well, it all kind of relates to each other in terms of coming together.
There's obviously 100 different ways you can manage the cap and figure all that out. Do you feel good about where y'all are at right now, and do you anticipate you can make that work without having to make any tough type of decisions?
Oh, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. I mean, we're not going to be able to keep everybody we'd like to keep. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, you want to make hay while these quarterbacks are young in their first contract, but, once you start to have some veterans that you're paying, which we are with Dak and DeMarcus Lawrence and that offensive line, and we all want a number one receiver, and we're fortunate that we've got three great receivers, but we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And, the cap's a real thing. And unfortunately, with COVID, the cap kind of stalled out a little bit. So that's most of these teams, cap experts, they build in to the fact that cap's going to keep growing. And when it hit a little bump there with COVID, with the revenue going down because of all the restrictions we had during the pandemic, then it's real. And certainly we'll have to manage through it, and we'll have to make some tough decisions.
There's been conversation both from you and Jerry and also from guys like Troy and Michael on the radio about what a $20 million receiver should look like in terms of the game plan. You have some decisions with Amari's contract. What do you think a $20 million receiver should be contributing during this season?
Well, it's sometimes not all on the receiver too. It's all it's scheme. It's getting the receiver the ball, the touches, the targets that he needs. And but if you're going to pay somebody, a lot of money, you want them to be the best at what they do, whether that's catching, whether that's yards, whether that's receptions, whether that's touchdowns, whether that's throwing touchdown passes, winning football games if you're a quarterback, whether it's a running back if you're getting your touches and you're scoring touchdowns and you're running for yards. I mean, all those things. If you're a pass rusher, you want to be getting pressure and making plays. I mean, all those things relate to how a guy's paid. And once you pay that player a lot of money, then with that comes high expectations. And they know that. These players know that. They compete at the highest levels. DeMarcus Lawrence does. DeMarcus Ware did in his day. I mean, with that, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, both were made the highest paid at their position. With that comes accountability. And, that's a tough part of our business. As much as we respect these men, they also know that we've got to run a business, and we run a. There's only so much to go around, and we've been saying that since day one. And but the right guy has the money right now, and that's number 4. And from there, we've got to put the right pieces around him.
He was Dak obviously was healthy and played the second half of the season, but between what happened in 2020, the shoulder in training camp, the calf during the season, how do y'all feel about just the wear and tear of the last 15 months for him and where he is right now?
I think those are freak injuries for him. I mean, obviously, anytime a mobile quarterback puts himself in harm's way, then there's a chance you're going to have a weird tackle. I mean, that was he's out there on a corner and just so happened the guy twisted wrong and, it gave. And so, he knows he's got to manage the game the right way. He's got to manage himself in terms of when he makes decisions to run a ball. And, and then you're going to have the freak accidents, which just are a part of our game. But overall, I think Dak is a healthy quarterback, and he's built for action, and we feel good about him.
2 years ago here, you told us, okay, now that I've got McCarthy and I don't have Rod Mary, you're like, Rod did a great job and he knew exactly what he wanted. Now we can try and fit the scheme to players a little bit more. Where does Dan fall in that? And now that you're in your second year trying to get the best personnel for Dan to work with, what have you learned?
I just think we're learning what his vision is for players. And certainly I think we did a good job providing him with the players that he had, J-Ron Curse, a Kazee, a Neal, obviously the guys we drafted. I mean, he's really able to verbalize what he's trying to get accomplished with personnel. And the good news is I think they're all right here. We've got a great personnel department that, under Will's leadership, really I think between free agency and the draft can certainly build on what we did last year.
When y'all found a diamond in the rough with J-Ron last year, it seemed like when you hit like that on a player like that, is that exciting, that the potential that you can do that again, or does it add pressure to be able to find production like that in the free agent market?
No, I think it just shows you that it can be done. Is it easy? Of course not. I mean, you want to hit on those guys, but you're not always. I mean, these are human beings, and you think you've got a feel for what a player may represent and what he can do for you in today's game, and you hope you hit on them, but you never know that for sure. So, but I do think we can do it. I think we've done a good job of supplementing, which, of course, we want to be a homegrown team and build through the draft. But I think we've also done a good job of finding the right pieces to complement the draft so that we're able to make a pick like Micah Parsons. We're able to make a pick like CeeDee Lamb, where you're not just driven by need. And after the 2 corners went off, we said we're not going to push the issue. Those were the only 2 we felt like were top 10 caliber corners, and Micah's sitting there, and turns out we may have had someone really looking over us in terms of having Micah be there and those 2 corners not be there.
Yeah, you said after the playoff last that Jerry told everyone, think about what this feels like, sit in this emotion for a little bit.
Yeah.
Did this feel more disappointing than previous playoff losses? Why?
I just think we really felt like this team was coming together, that we were getting the right traction. We defensively, obviously, under Dan's leadership, we were making a lot of plays on the defensive side of the ball. We'd shown we could really play some good offensive football, and unfortunately, it just didn't come together. But we did have, as we all know, some high expectations for this team, and it was certainly a tough one to lose that. But as I told you when we started here, this game's close. I mean, we look at the divisional round, and then you look at the championship rounds to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, all these plays are coming down, not unlike our game, our playoff game, to the last play. The little things matter, the penalties, the execution, all the little things matter, and that's why it was important to Jerry and I that we can build on, some continuity with our staff and Mike and move forward.
I know you're feeling the emotion just as much, but how hard is it for you to watch your dad feel that kind of emotion? How do you handle a situation like that, or what do you say?
Well, it's difficult because, like I said, when he went in the Hall of Fame, someone asked me how important it was to him. I said, well, I think he would trade the Hall of Fame for one more championship, and but that's how important, trying to, bring a championship to our great fans, and that's just so important. We think the best fans in the world, and we've been unfortunately on a dry run, and we feel accountable and feel like we owe it to Dallas Cowboy fans and our organization to win a championship. And as Jerry, I know he firmly believes it starts with him, and then moves right on down through me and Mike and Will and the whole organization. And we just as he said, it's very disappointing, but you got to get back up and go to work again, and that's what we're doing.
I imagine you said this the day before I got here, but you guys try and make sure that come draft you don't have any super pressing needs, but what positions would you say you most want to upgrade this offseason, or just you have to see where
it's a little early. It's a work in progress for us to just say, these are our needs. This is what we want to be looking at right now. We're not prepared to do that just yet, and obviously a lot's going to affect how many of our players we can keep in general. Our goal is to keep our guys and then improve through the draft. And, if there's the right guy sitting out there, like we did last year with a Curse or a Watkins or somebody like that, then you jump. If not, then, we'll move forward and improve our team through the draft. But we've got a lot of work to do this offseason.
Do you remember the early conversation? Who first said, let's go get Kears?
It was trying to remember, but it's a team effort on these things. I mean, you get in there with Mike, and when you're talking about defensive guys, obviously Dan's very involved with his staff, and then of course Will and Jerry and we just get in there and start looking at these guys and see who might fit what we're trying to get accomplished as a defense, offense, or special teams, philosophy-wise.
That's all I got.
One non-Cowboys question for you. With the Bengals going to the Super Bowl, I'm working on a story on Katie Blackburn. Have you had any competition committee meetings with her, or not really yet?
Only by phone.
Okay.
And we've had a couple little updates because she just recently got named.
November, right?
But have a tremendous amount of respect for her, and so well deserved. And the Brown family is just a special NFL family.
What do you think her perspective can add to what y'all are doing on the competition committee?
Oh, I just think her experience in this league. I mean, that family has been around and for as far as I know, forever since its inception. And the Brown family is just special. So I just think her overall history and perspective of the NFL and the game is going to be interesting to see. Her bring that, buying through Mike, who was a huge competition committee member with Jerry for many, many years. And I know she has her father's perspective on and her grandfather's perspective on the game. So it'll be very enlightening, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot from her.
Yeah.